equal protection under the law of people being charged with misdemeanors for January 6th that were,
Yes.
you know, encouraging people to break the law and actually riling up everybody and getting a $500 fine versus the equal protection of somebody who was not even in the state at the time that it took place being sentenced to 22 years in jail
We see that.
for
Another thing that we see quite
somewhat of a
often
lesser crime.
is we see people of means basically being let go for various criminal acts. Okay, whether it's speeding, seatbelt tickets, it could be something. Generally, it's relatively minor charges, but we see them get off all the time. Okay, or not have any charges levied against them. And then somebody that is of lower income or a person of color or something like that, they throw the book at them. Okay, we also see a big deal with um, how people that don't have the income, they get accused of a crime. The DA comes in there with some quote unquote sweetheart deal for them and threatens that if they don't take that deal, that they will be found guilty and they will have to serve the maximum sentence for whatever crime it is. And we have a lot of people that already under a lot of mental duress that see that as the only way out for them. So they take these deals even though they never committed a crime.
You actually, I believe the last stat I saw on that is about 80% of um, first time crimes
Mm-hmm.
will take a plea deal, and that often, I think it's about 40 or 50% of the time that results in some form of jail time. Um, it's it's a problem, definitely, but it's
The
also
latest figures I have
yeah.
are at least 5% or one out of every 20 people currently serving time in some type of incarceration, either in jails or in prisons, are there and are not guilty of the crimes that they were convicted of.
Well, I don't know if you can say not guilty, but definitely that they took the plea deal and thus they got the jail time. Yeah.
No, they are there for crimes that they did not commit. They are
Really?
there. Yeah, these are innocent people. At least 5% of people that are incarcerated are innocent.
They just took the plea deal and said, I'm
Right.
guilty. That's dumb.
Well, when the system
So
run,
one out of every 20 people in jail or in prison are there and they're innocent.
well, look, you have to remember that 90% of the laws that are on the books right now that we have are monetarily punitive in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Most of everything that we have right now all has to deal with fines, seatbelt laws, helmet laws, all these little things, all these things that they fine you with. All of these things are just revenue generating vehicles. That's what
Right.
a majority of them are. When you have something that's not revenue generating, they're usually, like you said, the people that are going to be most affected by this is people that are not financially affluent. They don't have the means to really defend themselves. They don't have a lawyer on retainer. They don't have the ability to really do anything except rely on the system that has been put in place of having a public defender. Now, the public defender's offices across the nation are budgetarily restricted.
Mm-hmm.
They're only allotted a certain amount of money that they're allowed to use in order to defend the people that come up on their roster. So, if you're accused of doing something and you have to rely on a public defender, there is your guilt or innocence is not the factor that determines the quality of the defense that you get. It's the budget that that office has that determines the quality of the defense that you get. There is no such budgetary requirement for prosecutorial offices.
No.
They will spend every dime of the public coffers to convict you of a crime, while limiting your ability to defend it based on what the budget is. So
Yeah.
they can come out with DNA, fingerprint analysis, they can come out with voice recognition, they spy on you, use electronic media, do everything under the sun. But as you want to defend yourself against some of these things, you have to request for certain tests. You have to request for certain parts of your defense. And then that request is then pondered by the district attorney's office and whether or not they want to spend the money in defending you. And in most cases, they don't. So
Right.
you may be limited to $3,000 or $4,000 of budget for your defense, but the state can spend $1 million convicting you. And when you weigh that versus, okay, you have an insurmountable task of proving your innocence, because it's no longer a matter of them having to prove your guilt. As Nancy Pelosi said, you have to go to court and prove your innocence. How is the average Joe who gets accused of something supposed to put on an adequate defense when he or she is going to be hamstrung financially? They're not going to be able to bring in the expert witnesses. You're not going to have Dr. Michael Bodden come in and do, blood splatter analysis. So you're not going to have this guy or this guy. It's not going to happen. So you're forced into taking these pleas.
Well, yes, they are. I mean, what this really is a symptom. It's because the government misspends money. It's because the government doesn't do anything efficiently or effectively. The most effective thing they could do is put up at least as much money as what the prosecution is doing. But look at what we're seeing in state after state, city after city, even at the federal levels and all the way down to the local. Is we're spending money on absolutely ridiculous things like New York City, as an example, $12 billion being spent on illegal aliens as they keep the doors open to let more illegal aliens come into this nation and increase the problem's not going away. It's increasing day by day as they keep the doors open. So we're spending $12 billion. How much of that money could actually go to the trial system to be able to make sure people have more fair trials? And shouldn't we be focusing
What
on
about
that?
these?
Well, that's going to be ripped off. I guarantee you, they're going to steal those things and use them in the projects, reprogram it, and just take it for its part.
Those are your compliance robots.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's like having video cameras on the border. Yeah, that's going to stop something. No, it's only good for after the fact. But I mean,
New York City thinks they're going to stop something.
No, they don't. No, they don't. It's meant to, like most things in New York City, it's meant to be the show of, look, we're doing something. It's again going back to that my favorite term from politicians. We're doing something. It's ineffective. It's inefficient. It's just going to be a waste of money. But hey, we did something, so reelect us. And you have this false sense of security. I mean, look at what we saw. And I know I'm jumping through a couple of different subjects here, but look at what happened with this week, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and with Jerry Nadler. On Tuesday, they were being faced by their constituents. The voters are saying, we need to deal with the illegal immigration situation. It is destroying our schools. It is bankrupting New York City. We cannot afford it. And we're taking services away from moms and children, vets, and the homeless. And we're destroying our city. And their response from AOC and Jerry Nadler is, don't worry, we're going to get a new program for the illegal aliens. Joe Biden said, don't worry, I'm going to let the illegal aliens be able to work in our country, which is that huge violation right there. And then, and then they turn around and they say, oh, by the way, let's go protest climate change that no one's complaining about in New York State, which is the sixth cleanest. Hell, New York City is cleaner than most nations in the world in terms of climate change, and they want to have that protest instead. Talk about voter nullification. There's your root problem in all of this. You see what I mean?
Now, speaking of Biden, have you heard about his newest thing?
Oh, that he wants to issue photo IDs to all the illegals.
Or,
No.
or the fact that he just gave the Venezuelans, the 720,000 Venezuelans, not citizenship, but he's helping them, push them that way.
Work visas. Well, here's your problem. And just to run through that real quick.
So, yeah, or that one.
It's
Yeah,
400,000.
Kamala's all over putting out her spiel about how great this is going to be.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I want to go back. Biden used his executive power, and I believe it's an overreach of his power, to temporarily authorize the Venezuelans, many of the illegal aliens, to be able to work in the United States so that they can contribute, because all they have been so far is a net drain. This goes against the argument from the Democrats that, oh, illegal aliens are a net benefit. They don't cost us money. They bring in money. Well, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now if they were a net benefit. No, they're a net drag. So now he's going to allow them to temporarily work. Here's the problem with this. What are you going to do? So in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, you're going to just take away their jobs, and then what? And then they're back on the government dole? You're never going to take this away. But it's a great way to start them into the process of a path to citizenship that they shouldn't have. They cut the line. And this is a way. Well, since they're working here, since they have been part of our society, we can't kick them out and we can't take the jobs away from them. So we might as well make them citizens. This is an end around to circumvent Congress. This is an end around to force people to accept the demand from Democrats to allow illegal aliens to enter our borders, our open borders, and crush our system, because it will never end. And then we have Pennsylvania turning around and saying, oh, by the way, all of those illegal aliens, yeah, we're going to register them to vote by giving them IDs so that they can go to work. And yeah, they might actually vote in our elections, which means voter nullification. Same thing as what AOC and Jerry Nadler were doing. You no longer count.
Well, PA, what they said was everybody as of now who gets a driver's license will be automatically registered to vote unless they opt out.
Yeah.
That's the new thing in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania doesn't have any means of proving citizenship for getting a driver's license.
No.
Well, it's also state IDs. It's not just driver's license. It's state IDs.
Right. So, but what they're basically saying is we're going to illegally. It's not even a matter of saying, listen, well, if an illegal registers to vote, he or she is knowingly breaking the law, because they know you're not supposed to register to vote. You know you're not allowed to vote, and all the rest of that. Here's the state saying, we know there's illegals who live here. We know there's illegals that are going to get their driver's licenses. We are automatically going to register them to vote. The state of Pennsylvania is knowingly committing the act of the crime, whether or not the person who got the driver's license wants them to or not. So they're literally turning the illegals who have already broken the law to get here. They're saying, it doesn't matter if you don't want to vote or not. We're going to register you to vote, which is a crime. We're going to register you to vote anyway. The state is committing a crime in doing that. But they're not only acting as an accomplice, they're the facilitator of that crime. So now what happens? Can you imagine what happens when one of these illegals that doesn't realize that he or she is not supposed to vote goes and actually votes, and then they wind up getting caught up as being now committing a felony because they voted in a national election, and they say, well, you registered to vote. Well, I didn't register to vote.
No,
Well,
they're going to be encouraged to vote.
The state registered me to vote, not me. I thought I was I thought I was allowed to. But there'll be no penalty put on the state for breaking the law.
Yeah, but no one's even going to find out, because that would require someone to go through all the voter rolls, which Democrats don't want to do ever, to actually review each and every one of the people who are voting to check their citizenship status, which is something that is prohibited. Democrats do not want you to touch those rolls or look into them, which is why we have so many dead people in state after state after state. And why
Illegal
it's so
aliens
difficult.
don't care that they're breaking the law. They broke the law as soon as they came over the border, and they knew it. They
Absolutely.
broke the law by taking all the handouts from government, which is illegal. They drive, which is illegal, because most of them don't have driver's license. They don't have insurance.
No. And again, we're seeing the government interject itself on a short-sighted, we're doing something message. They're saying, they're putting it out as if they're being good Samaritans. When, let's go back to the root. You opened the border, you welded the gates open in Arizona. You're taking away the barbed wire and the defenses of Texas so that a flood of people who should not be in our nation, that we did not ask to be here, who we have no obligation to, you're letting them come in to swamp our systems, to overwhelm city after city after city. Not just in Texas, we're talking about Chicago, Baltimore, New York, we're talking about LA, overwhelming the systems, depriving the citizens in each and every one of those cities of their basic essential services. And that's the root problem. And their answer is, don't worry, we're just going to make it more attractive to have more illegal aliens continue to do this as we usurp our voter laws by allowing them to do an end around and be able to vote. How can we not do? And within 3 years, you will see them say, since we've given them the right to vote, since we've allowed them into our nation and now they're working, we might as well give them citizenship. What's the difference? You're going to see it, guaranteed.
And it's all Trump's fault.
Oh yeah. Well, you're the bad guy and you're evil if you say, well, that's not how the Constitution works. That's not how the law works. That's not a constitutional process. And you're a racist then. You hate immigrants and you're a racist. Why?
Well-
Some of these people, I didn't say any color of people or any type of people. I'm saying this is unconstitutional. But that's the way they get to silence people.
Now, here's what's required in New York to get a state issued identification card. Okay. So the first thing is you have to have at least one that proves your date of birth. And that's either a passport, a U.S. birth certificate, a valid foreign passport, a certificate of naturalization or citizenship, U.S. employment authorization card with a valid foreign passport, U.S. employment authorization card, permanent resident card, Canadian birth certificate with St. Regis Mohawk Tribe photo ID card, a certified copy of U.S. consular report of birth abroad. So that's what you need as part of it. Okay,
Yeah,
so notice there's quite a few things there that are not U.S. originated.
Yeah. In countries that we can't verify.
And then do you have a U.S. Social Security card? So if I answer no, and I say that, I've never been issued Social Security inability. I have a Social Security. So if I have a letter from Social Security Administration saying I'm ineligible, I can still apply for a state issue ID. Okay. And then you can actually do these for additional proof.
Yeah, but we know the illegal aliens, many of them, get Social Security cards that are fake.
So you can, let's say it's bank statement and utility bill. Okay. Additional proofs. Okay, so let's say it's valid.
I'm sorry. While you're sitting there doing that, I'm just scrolling through Twitter while I'm listening to you guys. Yeah.
Okay, so
Biden,
basically, what I'm getting at is you can obtain a state ID card in the state of New York.
Yeah.
And provide all foreign documents.
Yeah.
And New York default is to automatically register you to vote.
Yes.
Upon issuance of that ID.
Even though that's in the courts. Yes. Because there is an argument in the courts right now saying you can't allow, it's unconstitutional, they cannot vote in elections, but they're fighting that right now, which is also costing us money.
Mm-hmm.
It's an end around on the Constitution. It's an end around on Congress because they know they cannot pass this in Congress. They know that even with Democrats in charge or with progressives or doesn't matter, they can't get this through because the American people don't.
And that's the other thing. Okay, mandatory seatbelt laws required all across the United States. It is illegal for Congress to pass such a law. Okay, so what did they do? They did an end run around the Constitution. And they told all the states, you will either implement mandatory seatbelt laws or you will lose X amount of highway funds, of transportation funds from the U.S. government. They did the same thing with helmet laws. They did the same thing with the when the driving speed limit, maximum speed limit across the United States was 55. That again was something that Congress, that it was unconstitutional for the federal government to pass. So they forced the states to pass such a law in order to get the law through. And they did it by coercing them with the withholding of funds. And we see this every budget. We see something like this go on. We see this happening also at the state level, where the states will implement something that is actually in violation of the state constitution and force the counties to implement some type of ordinance or resolution or whatnot or law, because the state will refuse money to these various municipal agents in order to force them to do these laws that they can't.
Or the latest trend, which is something that Hochul, Newsom, Whitmer, and now Grisham in New Mexico have done. It's an emergency.
Yeah.
So no matter what, we get to override all of your rights, the entire Constitution. None of that counts anymore because emergency. Wait a minute. How's it an emergency? This has been ongoing. This is not epidemic.
Well, I want to see the clause in either the United States Constitution or any state constitution that states that the Constitution is suspended in cases of emergency.
You'll never find that in there. It's not in there.
I love when she said, well, it's my right to do it. And remember, no right is absolute.
So she said.
Well, then neither is your right to do it. That's not absolute either. Even if it did exist, which it doesn't, that right is not absolute.
And that right there is an oxymoron. Okay, if a right is not absolute, then it's not a right, it's a permission.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that after all the stuff that went down with COVID and the mandatory lockdowns and the more of these governors are going to come out and or even local levels are going to come out and try to do this crap because they saw that the people would submit. The only thing I think with this gun law that really helped was you had sheriffs come out and say, we ain't going to enforce it.
Well, most of COVID was a test run for larger lockdown plans, and you could even look back and see that Katrina was an initial run at that too. Was you had an emergency come in, and they said, "Oh well, let's see what we can get away with." And you had the sheriff's departments in the parishes in Louisiana weren't going into houses to rescue people; they were going into houses to take all the guns out of there.
Yeah.
It wasn't the sheriff, it was the National Guard.
Well, sheriff, National Guard, and everything. These people they would take it
It
away.
was all law enforcement in the area.
You had people that said, "We're not leaving our home. We're staying here. We're going to defend it," because you did have a lot of homes that were not completely submerged, that people could bear the storm, that could wear through. And they said, "No, we're staying here. We're going to defend our property." And they came in and they cleaned them out. Nobody's ever been held accountable for that. No one's been accountable for the
Nobody
illegal
ever will
lockdown
be held accountable for it.
during COVID. And now they got this one in New Mexico pulling this crap. At least now the law enforcement said, "No, this is not going to happen. We're not going to be
Well, it
compliant."
wasn't just law enforcement. The state DA came out also.
Well, the DA said we're not enforcing this, and now at least there's there's the beginning of an impeachment inquiry in New Mexico to get rid of her. And now it's just going to be a matter of, okay, well, we get that done. Well, what kind of civil cases can be filed against this woman on top of that? But like I said, there is pushback on a lot of these things. There's just not enough pushback. And when you see,
And more often than not, it's not the right type of pushback. Okay. Most of the time, when people push back on it, they push back against the law and they never go after the people that are responsible for enacting that law.
Yeah, but it's like you said on last week's show or the week before that a lot of these people, you can't go after them because it's set up in their jobs that you can't prosecute. That you can't prosecute a prosecutor for illegally throwing you in jail or getting you convicted.
Actually, yeah,
Yeah.
you can't. There are mechanisms, even with sovereign immunity or qualified immunity, there are mechanisms when they act outside the authority of their office that they lose that sovereign immunity. Passing a blatantly unconstitutional law is acting outside of the authority of the office. Once they do that, they absolve themselves of any sovereign immunity.
well, we know what they did. Now it's just a matter of actually going after them with it. We can point to the case law. We can point to what powers are available to the people. But if the people don't actually enact on those powers, just pointing to it comes as a veiled threat.
We can point to the actual state laws that say this.
Right. But like I said, I mean, my dog can point to the bird in the tree all day, but if I don't go after the bird, it's not going to wind up on my dinner plate. It don't matter what we can point to. If nobody acts on it, it doesn't mean anything. It's just another hollow, veiled threat that says, "Oh, you can't do that." And they go, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" But you're going to do nothing. That's what you're going to do. You're going to do nothing about it. This is why we keep trying to encourage people to try and help us support it, because we have a plan to do something about these things where nobody else is, but we need help getting it done. We can't do it alone.
Right.
But like until
it takes a lot of money to go up against government. Plain and simple. It takes a lot of money to do it.
Well, eventually we'll have one of our plans enacted. We'll be able to go after somebody, and hopefully some other people take up the cue and decide to get into the fight with us, because we have the tools at our disposal. But if we can't utilize the tools, and it's not like we're going to be able to turn to government and say, "Hey, listen, government, can you help us undermine the illegal activity that you have been doing against us?" No, the government's not going to help us rein in government. The private sector isn't going to help us rein in government because most of the private sector is benefiting from government in some way or another that they can't afford to insult their cash cow. It's those of us, the little guys, that keep getting crapped on day after day after day that have to unite and bring those powers to bear against government because nobody's coming to help. Nobody is coming to our rescue. We have to do it ourselves.
Well, and the Constitution has that built in. And that kind of brings us to the Convention of States. One of the things people don't realize how much power they have. Not just that we can vote people out, not only that we can do the recalls, but the Constitution allows us to change the very things that are being abused.
But again, Michael,
yeah,
you can have 99% of the people in this country say, we want a convention of the states because we want to change the way things are done. If the people who put their hand on a book decide they don't want to follow the will of the people doesn't mean anything. You still need a government mechanism in order to affect a convention of the states. And as long as the people who are in charge of the government mechanism are part of the swamp, the cesspool, the sewer that is government, don't expect it to take place.
No,
Michael can constitutional amendments that were made that were never recorded.
I understand
because of the swamp.
But here's the thing, because that comes back to the same root thing. We were just at yesterday, Staten Island, Convention of States, the meetings there. We have people from Maine, we have people from New Jersey, and of course New York City and New York State in there as well. And one of the key things is people don't realize you have the power. Yes, the politicians have to go and say, okay, yes, we're going to do this. And 19 states have done that. But here's the thing. What we control those people. It's just like, and again, I go back to the example.
No, you don't.
Do we though? Do we really?
No, you don't.
Those people. What? When government tells you need a friggin' permit to put a shed in your backyard, you don't control shit.
Well, no, we don't have to comply.
Mike.
Go ahead.
Who determines the delegates that are going to represent the state?
Depending on what you mean in an election,
no, for a constitutional convention, who determines the delegates?
That would be on the committees, the state committees.
No, it's state legislatures.
Legislatures, yes.
Okay, state legislatures determine. Okay, yeah. Who's state legislature?
What you mean in New York?
It's the government.
Yes, who are elected by the people.
Okay.
Again,
so
but see,
do you trust your government to your legislature to actually pick delegates that are actually going to represent your wishes?
I expect that they will do whatever it takes to get reelected. And if there is enough pressure on them to have delegates in there to say yes to
they're going to get reelected.
No. And again, this is part
of what percentage of incumbents were reelected last year? Last
88%. So I understand 88% people. Again, this is why it's taking so long. They've been working on this for 10 years. They started the process in 2013, and now they've got 19 states. It's 2023. They're looking at possibly being able to move forward with this, at least on a limited level, by 2027. Because it is a slow process, but the pressure can and is being put on more and more of these politicians. And now, we are seeing a response even from, even right now, there's been Vivek Ramaswamy, there's DeSantis. Yes, they're saying that there's.
Who else called for a convention of state?
What?
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I know he did. And that's fine. I understand what his agenda is.
So, you know what happened last time we had a convention of states?
That was back when we ratified the Constitution.
The last governing document, which was the Articles of Confederation, was thrown out.
Yeah.
Okay. You know why? You know what the delegates were under orders for?
I do not remember at this moment.
They were under orders not to change, not to abandon the Articles of Confederation, but to amend the Articles of Confederation.
Uh-huh.
Okay? They had no authority to write a new constitution. They were under orders not to. They were under orders just to amend the Articles of Confederation.
And it didn't work. The pressure from the public.
No, it wasn't the pressure from the public.
I believe it was.
No, it wasn't.
See, this is here's the fundamental disagreement that we have. And it's fine. We've disagreed before on this program. That's fine. I do believe that it is possible with a convention of states, if a lot of things can change in our government if we actually have a reaction. As an example, and I'm going back to, again, what happened this week, AOC, Jerry Nadler. They're trying to nullify voters by ignoring their actual complaints about illegal immigration and trying to turn the crowds and say, no, look about climate change. Let's change the conversation. Those voters in those districts, if they really want to see something happen, if people in New York City, New York State, in the country want to see something done, we have to not have 88% reelection. And I guarantee you, and even Stephen E. Smith on ESPN, he made it, this was 2018 when he made the statement. All it takes is one election. It's just one election where they're down to maybe 60% reelection. If we had, we had that in 2010 and the entire system freaked out just because we had a handful of people from the Tea Party, or more aligning themselves, at least at that moment, with the Tea Party movement. And that freaked out all of Washington. We can have the impact. It doesn't take a lot. It just takes something. People just need to get involved.
Well, you see, Mike, I think the part of the listen, I agree with what you're saying, and I do, and every now and then I'll throw my rose, colored glasses on and see the world as you do sometimes in the regard that you still have faith in the people and faith in the system, that it will work according to the way it was designed.
Yes.
The problem is the way it was designed has been long forgotten. The people are easily distracted, and the people who changed the way the system runs have skewed the game so far in their favor that they know, like you said before, well, it's taken 10 years, but we're doing this. Listen, the American psyche, the American memory is got about the lifespan of a mayfly. They forget. It's
and that's why I remind them.
Right. So when something takes 10 years, that's by design. They want it to take long so that the next shiny thing pops up and they remember that. And then that's what they get upset about. Listen, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to win re-election in a fucking landslide. And so is Jerry Nadler. Jerry Nadler could drop dead tomorrow. They can embalm him and run him in the election cycle next time. He will still win the seat because people do not pay attention. They don't care. They care about what's in their backyard on Monday, but then they complain about their neighbor's backyard on Tuesday. They forget. And they don't care. Yes, I would love for the system to work the way it was intended and for us to be able to exercise our constitutional liberties the way that the founders envisioned that we'd be able to do. But the system has been bastardized so badly, and the people all suffer from battered spouse syndrome. We are so used to getting our asses handed to us all the time. We don't know any other way anymore.
But here's my pushback against that, Frank, because you're not wrong. But the answer is that we have a growing. The entire reason why the news media are so terrified of independent media of citizen journalists, which has grown, and why there's so little trust in the mainstream news media is people are recognizing that something has to change. We are getting towards that critical mass, and that can go a couple of ways. That can go into, we've heard more and more people since 2017 talking about a second civil war. We've also had more and more people talking about a convention of states. We have more and more people saying that they have to be involved, and more people are showing the evidence of the corruption and saying this cannot continue. At some point, it's going to either we're going to start changing some of these things, whether it's a convention of states, which I think is one of probably the best option we could have, or it's going to turn into a civil war, which is not going to be pleasant. And the result of what happens to our nation won't exist after that. Those are our criteria.
I need to look up something here real quick.
Well, all I can think is like I said, I would love for things to work the way they want to work, but when you have arguably one of the most horrific crimes of the 21st century, and that's the Epstein Island situation, and you have Ghislaine Maxwell being sentenced to 20 years in jail. Jeffrey Epstein obviously being murdered in his jail cell because there's no way that man hung himself.
Yeah.
And we still don't have a friggin' client list. There is not one name on that client list that has been made public in an official governmental capacity. Leaks of the list have come out. Leaks of flight logs have come out.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. When you have the sitting Attorney General of the United States being questioned yesterday by Thomas Massey, saying, 2 years ago we asked you how many, if any at all, federal agents were involved with J6, and him saying, I don't know.
Yeah, which is not none.
He's had 2 years to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I look at it and said, okay, Congressman Massey, thank you very much for asking that question. It's very pertinent. We'd like to know the answer. However, there's another question I'd like to ask, and that is, if there were, and now you're saying you can't remember if there were or there weren't. Well, why is that even a question as to whether or not there were federal agents in the crowd? If they weren't there to spur on a riot, why would they be there at all? The answer to that question should be there were no federal agents in the crowd.
Should be.
That's what the answer should be. But because that's not what the answer was, leads you to believe by omission of truth that there were, and that they can't answer the question as to how many. The question should have been, now that we know that there was a more than likely certainty that there were federal agents in the crowd, why? Why were they there? For what purpose would there have been for a single federal agent to be in plain clothes mixing with the crowd of people if they were not, as he was questioned, a paid informant to the justice system? Why would there be a single person there? Why would there be a single representative of the federal government, either in the Secret Service, FBI, NSA, whatever? Why would they have been there? For what purpose would they have served to be there if not a paid operative, which would not be somebody under the employ of the federal government, but a subcontractor too? Okay. We know that there's these guys that go, informants. These are usually shady people that the government pays. Oh, what was the number? $4 billion is what the federal government pays annually to our informant network. But you didn't have any informants there. So who was there and why? And if the 2 years of being questioned, the top law enforcement official of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, can't or won't answer that question to the very committee that authorizes that bureau to be in existence.
Right. They need
When
to.
you have, when
Yeah.
you look at that,
Mm-hmm.
look at that scenario, just that. Forget the rest of government. Just look at
Yeah.
that and think you can have an ounce of faith in anything that this government, anything governmental procedure. You can't. You can't. Looking at
Just
that and
because
saying,
the corruption, wait a minute, just because the corruption exists doesn't mean that it needs to remain. We
no,
can
that
take the action. We are
exactly,
unique in this nation
exactly. So,
in that we can change the corruption. We can,
but
not to remove it
you
all,
can't. Listen, you cannot get rid of the corruption
not
by
completely.
asking a corrupt system to police itself into not being
They aren't,
corrupt
but
anymore.
here's the underlying thing, and that's what the Constitution's about, is they aren't the government. They are operatives of the people. We
But
keep
they
forgetting
don't.
that is
But
that is
they.
the key.
But they don't see that anymore.
Of course, they
They.
don't see that. They
It,
have their agenda. But what we need, what the public needs to do, is to step up and remember. Too many people are sitting on the sidelines with their heads down, trying to stay quiet because they're afraid that someone's going to say you're a bad person because you didn't obey. You've heard me say this over and over again. Screw that. You need to speak up. You need to be involved. And we need to encourage people to do that. They don't have to go to the convention states. It's one process. The most important thing, even with that, no matter every single thing we'll talk about, whether it's Kamala and her useless actions that she's doing, and now she's got gun control, we'll talk about that. The thing is, what's being pointed out is you need to be involved. You cannot stay silent. If that means getting out and petitioning, if that means getting out to vote, I'm not even saying which party. I don't care. You have to speak up. And that's
all
the
right.
biggest problem we have right now.
Well, listen. Right now, the entirety of the federal government and even local government, state government, every government at this point in time is heels, baby faces, and marks. Okay. You go to watch a professional wrestling match. It's Hulk Hogan versus the Honky Tonk Man. Yes, I'm gonna date myself as to some of the better matches in history, and Hulk Hogan, he's our good guy. He's our champion. He's our guy who's really gonna set the record straight for everybody. And a Honky Tonk Man. He's just a heel. He's a low down, dirty scoundrel. And as soon as he gets the attention of the referee, he does a mule kick and he catches Hulk in the groin, and the Hulk goes down, and he almost gets him for the 3 count. Well, you know what? Well, why didn't the ref see it? How could the ref not see the guy throwing talcum powder in the other guy's eyes? And the manager didn't come up
Yeah,
onto because the ref is in on it. The ref is our
yeah.
justice system, and they're in on it.
It's
They're all in on
I-
it. And here's the thing: the American people of the audience, we're the marks. We buy into their show. We buy into it, and we cheer the good guy. We hate the bad guy. The good guy and the bad guy, they both go behind the curtain and they shake hands and think of how well they put it over on the crowd.
That's fantastic, except if you don't show up, they have no power. Here,
Yeah, but
hang
we
on.
do show
Jen,
up.
wait a minute. Jen's, hang on. Let's get a third voice in here. Jen, you've been very quiet. You tell me, what are you thinking about this?
I lost the topic.
Okay, so
Well,
we've gone too far in the weeds then. Okay.
Well, to finish my analogy real quick, do you know what happens at the end of every house show or at the end of every pay-per-view in wrestling? There's always something that's done, is what they call send the crowd home happy.
Yeah.
Okay. It's called sending the crowd home happy. At the end of the night, when the show is all done and the lights are off and the audience is still there and the TV cameras are shut down, they usually have some sort of match that makes everybody feel good, everybody feel good at the end of it. So everybody goes home happy. The good guy won. That's your media. Your media is the send them home happy.
Yeah.
Because you have one side of the media shows us what we want to see, the other part of the media shows that side what they want to see. And everybody goes home happy thinking that they won. And the only one who wins is the friggin' promoter. That's it. And the promoter is the people who have the money pulling the strings behind us, and nothing ever happens. You could run the same script from 35, 40, 50 years ago in a house show today, and it would be just as relevant as it was then because the crowd doesn't remember the old show.
Again, I say, and then we'll move on. But I believe if people are
How many people voted in the last election? What percentage of registered voters voted in the last election?
Well,
That
81
number's
million voted for Sleepy Joe, and Donald got
Those numbers are in
75
dispute.
million.
Those numbers are in dispute.
We know.
But
Again,
how many people voted? Registered voters voted in the last election. What percentage?
it's supposed
I
to
know
be
you
like
know this, Michael.
About 153 million.
What percentage?
Oh, the percentage?
Yeah.
Oh God. God, that was something like 80%. At 153 million registered voters, it's about 153. It's about about 80%. If that number were correct.
You're saying that 80% of registered voters actually voted?
153. I'm not counting children. I'm counting. Let's see. Everyone who's of working age. There's
how many,
probably
Michael? Spit it
retirees
out.
on there. Go ahead. Let's
It was
start.
less than 60%.
Okay, I'm probably not counting some of the youth.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
Well, if we're looking at the numbers, anywhere between 156 million and 170 million people voted.
Yeah.
155 million people. So you would imagine that's almost
Okay.
90% all registered voters.
66% of eligible voters voted in the last election, last presidential election.
Okay, that's the number. That's the percentage they're going with. All right.
Okay,
How
that's,
many
that
Americans
was
are of
by
voting
Pew
age?
Research Center.
Okay.
How many Americans are of voting age that they could extrapolate that number from and then still come out with the 81 million versus 77 million?
I actually looked that up the other day, and it's like 200 million.
Sounds about right.
Right. So the numbers just doesn't add up.
No,
That's the
the
number of
math
people
is
that voted if they're going to talk about that being the number of people that they actually tallied.
the numbers. That's my problem. The numbers are depending on how you're counting and who you're counting, you get different numbers. The system is warped, and that doesn't take into account, like, if you've seen New York City Citizens Audit, who have gone through public records from the Board of Elections from New York State, and New York State's own records show at least 50,000 people who voted in elections that have no residence. And in New York State, if you have no residence, you're not supposed to, that's not a valid vote. And yet
Well,
they
neither
vote.
are dead people, but they vote too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then even less than 66% of eligible voters voted last election.
Oh, yeah. Less than 153 million people voted. Absolutely. Because
Okay.
the numbers we're seeing
So
in New
if
York.
less than 66% of people are voting,
Yeah.
what's that tell you?
People
Well,
have their
I
heads
think-
down.
I think the people I get upset with too are the ones that you start talking politics about, and they have a certain view of everything, and it's like, well, who did you vote for? Oh, I don't vote. I'm not registered.
Yeah.
Well, how can you change anything or make sure your voice is being heard if you don't go vote?
Their voice isn't being heard. If you don't vote, you don't count.
You could change outcomes if you go vote.
Yeah. Apathy is huge these days. But speaking of apathy, and we've been on this for a while, I think we may have gone too far into
No, I want to go back to, because I got sidetracked because I was looking something up.
Yeah.
Because after the last presidential election, I put together a spreadsheet and I had to find it of the Electoral College by state. Okay. So, first off, for any convention of state, who sets the terms for the said convention?
It would be the delegates.
No.
Okay. I'm not
Okay.
the one. I covered the event. I don't profess to know everything about the Convention of States.
Okay. For a convention of states, okay, these states apply to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs at least a 2/3
Right.
request from the states.
38 states.
Then the federal government calls a convention of states
Mhm.
and it sets the rules for said convention. It sets the rules for the number of delegates. It sets the rules across the board.
Mhm.
Okay. So depending on how they determine on how the delegates are set, right now, would you believe that a conservative majority or a liberal majority would be in control if they set it based upon the amount of representatives in the House?
Probably more liberal, depending on the areas, depending on specifics, but I would expect it to be more liberal.
It would be more liberal.
Yeah.
Okay. Because based on a 435 count, and I just went through this pretty quick, by my counts, there would be at least 266 delegates from left-leaning states.
Yeah.
Okay. The 50% mark is 217.5.
Yeah. But again, my point on everything about the Convention of States, which I am not an expert on, and I understand it is a flawed system. When I've talked with Mark Meckler, when I was there in Staten Island, there are issues with it, no question. I'm not saying that it's the perfect answer. I'm not even saying it's the answer. I'm saying it's part of the means. This system has that in there because part of that is the activity of the public. The ultimate answer about every issue facing our government is people not being silent, not laying down and just obey. And that is the most important factor.
And here's my thing. Okay. A convention of states is going to be literally ran by government, and it is going to be orchestrated by government.
And
it's not going to be ran by the people.
I understand, but ultimately we are.
Okay. Now, if we want real change, honestly, and it's change that I've been advocating for since day one of the Liberty First Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It has to be at the local level. We have to start in our communities first. Yeah. And once we start getting our communities under control, then we can start expanding to higher levels of government. You can't work it from the top down. It will never work.
I agree with that. But if people are getting, sorry about that, New York City for you. If people are getting involved enough that there is a convention of states, then those same people are getting involved locally too. I do not see that as being mutually exclusive.
You want to know who's really calling for convention of states? It's not the people.
There's some politicians, but no, I think that
it's people like George Soros.
There is that constituent to it as well. But in the events that I have gone to, in the conversations that I've had about this, and honestly, there's not a lot of news out there. There's not a lot of coverage of this. But in the live coverage that I've been able to do in my firsthand witnessing of these events and talking to the individuals there, that's not the main impetus. I'm not
How
saying
many people were at that event you're at, Michael?
30 to 50.
How many people were in New York City?
Yeah. and
The question really is, Michael, when you talk to and you gauge the people about what you say, who has the appetite for something like this, you're talking about a lot of people that, when you say, are in the know. You're talking about a lot of people who understand that there is an option for the Convention of the States. You're talking about people that know there are legal and governmental and constitutional methods for being able to bring about certain change. So you're talking about people that you're talking to people that understand the way things at least should work. However, you're speaking to probably 1/100th of 1% of the average person.
Everything starts somewhere.
Right. Everything starts somewhere, but you're talking about it's like you go into a dental convention and talking about what toothpaste to use. If you're outside of it and you're talking to people don't have a clue. People don't have they don't have any frame of reference. They don't know what you're going to talk about. Look at any man on the street. Listen, you're the king of the man on the street interview. You're the king of it. You're the king of it. Go back and just go out one day and ask people randomly if you can find a safe spot to do it, because you're not exactly where you would normally be doing these things with your equipment. All right. Maybe you can get somebody in the precinct to back you up on this. But go out and do a random man on the street interview about what do you think about having a convention of the states?
I know how many. I'm very familiar with the fact.
Ask 20 people and then see what kind of response you get.
I know. I already know the kind of response I would get. But again, that's in part because people don't have the knowledge. What I'm speaking about and why I'm covering it, why I'm even talking about it, is not that I'm the advocate for it. It's because I want people to be educated. And again, the one thing I keep saying, this is about getting people to not be silent, not to lay down and obey. Let them find out about it and say there's a better way to do it. Fantastic. I just want people to be involved. And if that means educate people about the Convention of States, which is an option, imperfect as it is, the flaws inherent in it as they are, it's something. I don't care what starts the groundswell. I don't care what gets people involved. I don't care what it is that motivates people. I just want them to be involved. I want their motivation.
Oh, I agree with you on getting people involved. But Convention of States is not going to get people involved.
I don't care what. It's an option. I'm just saying.
What we can, know what we can maybe help get people involved with? An Easter egg hunt.
I don't. If that gets people to vote, I don't care what it takes to get people to vote.
Well, there's a huge Easter egg hunt that we could be getting at least 20 million people involved in right now. Where the hell is our friggin' F-35?
Yeah,
I thought they recovered that.
Parts of it. They've got parts of it. It's how do you lose an F-35 on American soil?
Well, again, government efficiency at its greatest. We built the greatest strike aircraft in the world with stealth capabilities that it's so great we can't even find it.
Yeah, right.
And here's the real funny thing about it is there are advanced avionics on that aircraft that are only known to us that allows for us to be able to track that said aircraft.
Right.
It is designed for SAR.
Yeah.
I just want to know if Hunter Biden's got his pilot's license or not.
Okay, it is literally designed for SAR, for search and rescue. Okay, so if the plane goes down, they can easily locate where the plane went down.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's really going on here because something doesn't make sense. There's no reason why any of our
I mean,
planes,
our aircraft had those capabilities when I was in.
they've had those capabilities since the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand.
They let Ukraine president fly it back over to Ukraine with the $335 million they just offered him.
Yeah,
Now the
probably.
question is, did they see? Now this is how skeptical I am with everything when it comes to government. They're saying, "No, we've recovered parts of the airplane." Well, where did you recover a part that you didn't recover the rest of it? Usually if a plane hits the ground, there's going to be a couple of more than just a couple of random flaps
Mm-hmm.
or something. You're going to have some sort of impact. It doesn't.
You're going to
It's
have
not
a huge debris field.
right. You're not going to have it shedding parts in midair. Like it's fluffing off fur off your cat as it runs through the house. You're going to have something. Now, this is like, okay, you recovered parts. I pictured Major Ramey sitting somewhere in Roswell, Mexico, holding up a piece of aluminum foil to the camera, going, "What the hell is this? This ain't what I found yesterday. This is well, and it's reminiscent of Hunt for Red October." How do we know that this thing, was actually disappeared and not deliberately flown someplace else?
It happens.
It
These
could
things
very
happen.
easily happen. Go
Yeah.
back to, I mean, look, I don't like Hollywood, but if you look at Hollywood being a prognosticator of things that could happen, there's some very decent movies that are out there that were made about things that happen in government that we only found out part of it because they made the story fit the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Wag the Dog being one of them.
Yeah, that was a real good one. Love that movie.
That was a very Clinton-esque kind of thing. But how do you lose an F-35? I don't understand how the hell that's possible.
Well,
Did we, the pilot pulled a chute and got out of there. How do we know? How do we know that the guy that they paraded in front of a camera that said this was the pilot's actually the pilot? How do we know
Yeah.
that the debris that they found actually came from what they said it came from? We don't know. We don't know.
No.
We are relying on the same government whose the press secretary for the president of the United States can say with a straight face that Joe Biden has stemmed the tide of illegal aliens coming into the country after dismantling miles of the fence and welding the friggin' gates open. Don't believe what you see on the TV of the tens of thousands of people coming in. Joe Biden put a stop to illegal immigration. He halted it. That's what Jean-Claude Van Damme, Pierre, whatever her name is over there. That's what she said to Peter Ducey. Joe Biden has stemmed the tide of illegal immigration.
Yeah, 7 million and counting. Yeah. Okay. 2.4 million for 2023 to match 2022. Yeah, they're out of their
Well,
mind.
listen, since we're not going to find the plane tonight, I looked in my backyard. I didn't see it. Everybody has seen that old Sleepy Joe announced that by another executive order, the establishing of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House.
And they got the right person to head that job, didn't they?
Yep. Kamala is going to now split her duties up between policing the border and celebrating hip hop
And policing guns.
to now being the gun control czar of the United States. So, as somebody posted in the Liberty First Foundation website earlier today, if you're a gun owner, you're safe. Kamala's on the job. So gun control is now a thing of the past because Kamala's in charge of it. So no matter what they try to institute, it's probably not going to work. So we should all breathe a fresh sigh of relief that Kamala's on the job. The same week this is announced that his son is being charged with 3 gun crimes. You can't make this shit up, people. You can't. You can't make it up.
And just what we need is another government think tank.
I mean, he might as well just put Hunter in charge of the DEA at this point. That's the only thing I can see that he hasn't done yet is just put Hunter in charge of DEA. Let's put Bob Menendez in charge of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Let's get him in there for that position.
Yeah, I stepped away for a second.
And here's another thing. Let's get Dr. Jill to be our Surgeon General.
Yeah, right.
Because she's a doctor after all.
Yeah. But now I stepped away for a second. And sorry, I was checking in part to see if all the fire trucks and police were coming over here to get me for having this conversation, talking about convention states. But, I don't know if you mentioned. So Biden now has made Kamala the point person for illegal immigration, and immigration went up. She's the point person for AI. She doesn't know anything about AI. She's now the point person for gun control, and he failed the gun control in California. She doesn't show up to any events. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And I don't understand who he thinks he's convincing that this has anything more to do than we just did something. That's what it is. She's there to say, look, we're doing something. And she is the most inept person in government that you could possibly pick to be in charge of anything. And we have the examples. She's had since March of 2021. She showed up at one meeting in terms of the border. That's it. One meeting to talk about the southern border in 3 years. And we've had more illegal aliens than we've had in the history of the nation. And wave after wave, she's useless. And now she's going to be in charge of gun violence. This is slapping people in the face saying you're just too stupid to notice what's going on. Does anyone disagree with me on that?
Well, listen, as long as she is our official United States ambassador to the hip hop community, everything's fine.
What?
As long as she's ambassador to the hip hop
community.
No,
I heard what you said. I don't understand.
Yeah. Everything's fine. Yeah.
Is that real?
Well, yeah. Well, she did the 50th anniversary of the hip hop culture. She opened up the hip hop museum. She had the big hip hop party at her lavish vice presidential estate.
Oh God!
Now let's not forget that Miss Harris, when she was the California State District Attorney, fabricated evidence, withheld evidence, and many other things in order to keep innocent people in jail.
Yeah, Dow mentioned the same
while
thing.
she was smoking pot and enjoying herself.
Mm-hmm. So you got to remember, she's not above breaking the law to quote unquote enforce the law.
Well, we also know what she's not above, and we also know what she's not below.
Yeah, just ask Willie Brown.
And Montel. Don't forget about Montel.
Oh yeah, and Montel too. Yeah, he doesn't talk about that.
He was just a stepping stone. Somebody had to get her into the Emmys that night.
Well, he doesn't talk about it, and I don't blame him for not talking about it. But I think it's just so insulting to the American people. But this is part of the process. I mean, this is why on 9/11, she was in New York. why she said she's ready to step in to take over for Joe. It seems to be, it's very political. It seems to be setting her up to replace Joe so that they can say, look, our candidate is a woman and a woman of color. You can't be against that, just like Obama. Otherwise, you're a racist and sexist. You have to elect her, get Joe out the way and let her in. And you just have to, because it's her turn. It's women's turn, to quote Hillary Clinton. And I think that's the setup. And they're saying, look at all the things she's doing that are so important. She's in charge of gun control. Well, God, that means to me that it means that we're going to have more gun violence, not less, because that is the history she has had. She went over to Europe to talk about Russia attacking Ukraine. And a week after she did that, Russia went into the Ukraine. She went down to South Korea to talk about, well, North Korea especially. And North Korea fired off 10 rockets, and she insulted everyone in South Korea, and it was an international incident. Both times she went down there. She's, again, one time, she's been 3 years to work on immigration. She's shown up near the border once. She actually had a meeting about the border once. She is the definition of failure.
Well, and I think what cracks me up is how they worded this division that she's going to be heading as gun violence prevention, because we've already had 256 or 526 incidences of mass shootings so far this year.
That's a lie. There was a mass shooting in Utica, New York. Oneida, New York.
Yeah, but that's what they're telling the people.
Yeah, they're telling.
And how many people are going to believe this? Because we already know an X amount of people do believe it, because facts don't matter to the Democrats. It's whatever they say is fact.
I know. And it's like, that's the example I was going to use, is Oneida, where they said, oh, it's a school shooting. No, it was a shooting in a parking lot of a school after a football game. And it had nothing to do with the school. It had nothing to do with the children. And yet it's still considered a school shooting because it took place on the parking lot of a school. Half of these events are taking place after school at the middle of the night on weekends, and they still count it. That's a school shooting. It's a mass shooting. No, it's not. Just because there was a crowd nearby didn't make it a mass shooting. It was a one-on-one event. But
well, and I think the thing that the people need to wake up to also is the fact that every time they come out with one of these gun laws, it always hurts the law-abiding citizen. The criminals don't care about laws. That's why you still have shootings every weekend in Chicago. Those aren't the law-abiding citizens out there having gunfights.
Well, it's just like in New Mexico. Governor Grisham, what was it? I was talking about it Sunday last week. She came out and she said, yeah, I put out that statewide emergency powers because the epidemic of gun control. And in the week that she had it, before the courts reversed it on her, there were 296 shootings, which tells you that she was absolutely useless. The state of emergency power she decided she wanted to give herself didn't stop any of the crime. In fact, it increased it. Why? Because the law-abiding citizens who were there to defend themselves were denied the ability to defend themselves. More women, more poor people, more minorities were hurt by what she did than actually were helped. And now we have Kamala Harris, who's going to double down on that same mentality. This is dangerous. It's just insanely dangerous. And Pete says it right. Oh, yeah, we're going to have more gun-free zones. Yeah, because that stopped criminals. I know that's you, Frank.
I don't even know what the hell that is.
Oh, is that Mike?
Are
you doing that, Mike?
I'm looking, and I can't.
Oh,
can't
I thought we
find it.
needed to hear Kamala laugh a little bit.
Now, the cackle.
Well, thanks for letting me know that was going to be you on your soundboard, because I'm looking at mine going, I disabled mine a while ago. What the hell happened?
And I'm like, I don't have any laugh tracks on
I
my
figured it
soundboard.
had to have been Mr. Marshall up there because he had that shit-eating grin on his face.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
I
it's
was
so
just trying
evil.
to find the transcript of Kamala's world famous passage of time speech, where she repeated the same exact paragraph 4 times in 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, she's completely useless.
But she's up for the job.
Well, she's got a 2-year. She's got a 2-year, a second grader writing her speeches because she can't talk for crap.
Listen, don't you dare besmirch a second grader like that.
Yeah.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, and she's the hero of the left because she's a woman and she's a woman of color. Really, I mean, come on. She is such the example of why DEI is the worst thing you could possibly do. She is unqualified and incapable, and she's been elevated to the highest levels that she possibly could, almost. And we see.
Oh, wait a minute!
Over and over how
No, gosh! How do you know she's a woman?
She said so. She could have been lying, but she said so. She was talking to Charlemagne.
We can't
But I'm a
define
woman.
what a woman is, though.
Well, according to Ketanji Jackson Brown, it's even if she thinks she's a woman, we need a biologist, some kind of scientist to confirm that. But that's the theory she's running around with right now.
Well. Plus, remember during the Me Too movement, it was believe all women.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what they say. Believe all women.
Oh, unless they're talking about Hunter
Or Joe.
Or Joe. Or Bill.
Or Bill.
Yeah. Or Democrats in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just fun watching it. It's so amazing when you watch all these leftists like Bill Maher, when they say, Me Too doesn't matter. Elect Joe Biden anyway. They say, oh, I want to see a recession because it'll hurt President Trump from getting reelected. They get what they asked for. Eric Adams comes out. He's asking for, no, we have to have illegal immigration. We need open borders. Oh, by the way, the state is going bankrupt. The city's going bankrupt. We can't keep up.
I tried finding it before. I saved the video clip, but I don't know where the hell I saved it to, whether it was my phone or the computer, of the Botox demon up there in New York up there.
Hocho?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
My invitation to the world is to send us your needy. We will clothe them and house them and feed them and educate them because we're New York and we're New York strong and this is what we want. To the other day, please, for the love of God, stop sending people here. We don't have the resources for it. But then her and Adams both, instead of owning up to their part of the debacle, just completely and totally put the blame off on Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump's fault.
That's what I said earlier. They came. I mean, we've 3.5 years of Biden administration, and they're still blaming everything on Trump.
Well,
they always will.
If we go back, I mean, we can keep pointing fingers at the border and everything else like that. The truth of the matter is, Donald Trump did more to try and secure our border than any other president in American history. He tried to do more to secure our border. Whether you liked his ideas, you didn't like his ideas, you didn't like what it costs or anything else like that. The fact of the matter is, if fences didn't work, there wouldn't be one around the friggin' White House.
123 nations around the world have walls. 123.
And
They
how
work.
many of them? And how many of them have we helped to build?
Right. Secure borders.
Yeah.
Secure borders are the very first thing you need to having an actual country. And Donald Trump did the best he could do to secure a border in the face of having lawsuit after lawsuit after activist judge coming down and closing this down, suspending that, putting this on hold, that on hold. And wherever he couldn't put a wall, he put Border Patrol agents. The man did everything he possibly could. Now, everyone knows I am not someone who sings Donald Trump's praises easily. I'm very critical of the man because of his Second Amendment position that he's got. But there are a lot of things that he did do right. But when you sit there and you're going to point your finger at Donald Trump saying he's responsible for the border, what you can point to is the fact that the United States economy was doing so much better under Donald Trump that it made the United States a much more appealing destination for people wanting to get out of a downtrodden society so they would want to come to the United States. That's what he's responsible for. He's responsible for a good economic condition. If you really want to go back and look at it, during the Obama administration and their passing of the Affordable Care Act, they were sending pamphlets and booklets and agents and different people working for different outreach programs to South America, Central America, telling these people how to come to America to enroll in Obamacare.
Actually,
They were telling these people, come to America and you will get free health care, free government health care. And they were telling them, go to this part of the border, go to that part of the border. This is where it's not policed. This is where the coyotes charge the least amount of money to smuggle you. This is where you have the best opportunity to pass without being,
actually, Frank,
intercepted by Border Patrol. They were doing this purposefully during the Obama administration to bait the hook to get as many people here as possible. Trump put an end to it, improves economic conditions, which now makes America that much more appealing to people that want a better life for themselves. And believe me, I don't begrudge any human being on the face of the earth for wanting to come to this country. This is, for all of our faults, still the greatest nation on earth with the greatest amount of opportunity. Our poorest Americans are among the wealthiest in the world anywhere else. This is the land of opportunity where people can do what they want to do, and I do not begrudge anyone for coming here. We want them to follow the law. That's all we ask, is follow the law, check in at the door. That's it. It's a very simple thing. Is our system completely screwed up where it's taking 6, 7, 8 years for eligible people to become American citizens? Yes. That system needs to be streamlined. It needs to be, reworked and remanaged. But again, the system is fucked up for a reason, because they would rather have illegals come here and defy the law than having qualified people come here and obey the law. Because the people who come here qualified are going to be educated, disciplined, motivated to work. They want to become part of the fabric of America. They want their children to be properly educated. They want to be properly housed, and they want to have upward mobility. The people that come here legally want to be Americans. People that want to be Americans want to do so because they love the idea of America. And that's the problem.
Well,
because if you love the idea of America, you don't want to be beholden to the government, which means you're less likely to vote for the people promising the handouts.
Well,
that's why they make the system complicated.
Let me just update one thing you said about that, Frank, because it isn't just the Obama administration. People don't realize this year, in February, it came out that the Red Cross is taking U.S. taxpayer dollars through their grants, and they are providing maps to illegal aliens right now in Mexico and throughout South America, showing them the routes they need to take to illegally enter the United States. That is a fact. The United
Oh.
States government is directly funding the Red Cross to show illegal aliens how to enter America. We knew this since February. We have the documentation. I actually presented it on my program.
Right. Well, I
Well-
only said we knew that it was happening under Obama. I never said it stopped.
Oh,
When-
well,
When they walk across the border with brand new cell phones, brand new clothes, brand new backpacks, brand new shoes, you know they're being funded. We hear them talk about, well, they just walked 200,000 miles. No, they're not walking. They're being transported in a lot of those areas.
Well, here's
Claiming
one thing.
asylum, you can't tell me that 7 million illegal aliens have claimed asylum because they're so persecuted and that they fear for their lives in their country. That's bullcrap. I would
Yeah,
take a
and
percentage of
that's
that.
actually one of the things that they are told on their trips is just as soon as your feet hit American soil, find the first person of authority you can find and claim asylum.
and make up a story.
700 million people over the last 3 years have not been in fear for their lives in their country.
Okay, but that's literally what they are told, because the courts that are supposed to determine eligibility for asylum are so overwhelmed that the cases are so far out there that they can't return them to where they came from under an asylum claim.
Well, here's the
Okay.
thing about
But they can't be put in the courts because courts are so overloaded.
Well, that's why they hand them the
this
piece of
gray
paper.
area where you can't do anything with them.
That's
Well-
why they hand them the piece of paper and tell them come back in 3 years, and then they
Yeah.
disappear. And then you walk around your town and nobody. They refuse to learn the English language. They fly their flag. They're trying to turn this country into their country. No, this is our country. Learn to speak English.
well,
I
they-
remember when I was in my early to mid 20s,
Mhm.
we voted on a law in California to make English the official language of the state.
But
Never heard of anything since. Because
well,
when it went to court, when it originally went to court, it was, oh, you don't understand what you're voting for. You can't do that because this is no. We as Californians said that we wanted the official language of California to be English.
yeah, but that's exclusionary, and of course, you're a bad person to want English, the predominant language, to be our language in all of our documents. No, you have to be DEI. You have to be inclusive. No, I don't. We didn't ask these people to come here. The American people didn't. And, it really boggles my mind when we think about this entire process and the way it is corrupting us. They say, oh, I'm an asylum seeker. The process for asylum takes 18 months minimum. You're supposed to be vetted. And in that vetting, they determine, are you actually seeking asylum? Part of the process of asylum is they're not all coming from Mexico. You're supposed to go to the first safe nation that you reach outside of your country. Well, unless you happen to be in, what's right below Central America? What is that? Belize. So unless you're coming from Belize, and they're not, then Mexico isn't the first stop. There's a dozen different nations that you're supposed to get to. We got people coming from Angola and from China who are coming through the open gates in Arizona, and they're claiming asylum. You're in China. There are dozens of countries you could stop at before you get to America. You're coming from Angola. There are dozens of countries that you're going to hit before you hit America. in our southwest border. And yet we're letting these people in. You can't say they're asylum seekers when they're not seeking asylum, because they didn't stop in Europe, in Africa, in all the countries that were the 24 countries they had to get through before they got to America. So this is just a farce at every level. And we need to call this out. I mean, we can't do this. We can't spend $12 billion on illegal aliens in New York City and expect that the city's going to operate. And we're seeing the city fall apart, not just for every reason. And then we have this on top of it. It's just destroying America. It really is. We're killing ourselves with this.
Well, everybody's talking about the southwest border.
Well, there's the northern border too. No one talks about it, but there's less of a
And
record.
illegal immigration and illegal entry at the northern border is also rapidly increasing.
Yeah, but
Okay. Everybody talks about the southern border. Nobody talks about the northern border.
you know why? Because almost the entirety, the overwhelming majority of the northern border is trees. There's no fence. There's not. They have mile markers every couple dozen miles with a little stone that says America on one side and Canada on the other. You can literally walk across the forest and enter the United States through, I believe it's 6 different states, and no one would ever know. There's no cameras, no trees, no people. So that's why no one talks about it, because you can't find them, because no one's standing around in the middle of a forest. But you can't see them laying down dead in a ditch because they died of dehydration in trying to cross through Texas or Arizona and across the Rio Grande. That's why you see all the attention in the Southwest.
Now, I can attest, okay, at least in the area I'm at in upstate New York, and many of you don't know this, I live really close to the Canadian border.
Well, before you get in, I gotta say goodbye real quick. I just got a phone call I gotta reply to right now. So I'm gonna be getting out of here. You guys continue the conversation. I'm gonna probably check in with you guys on the comment thread, but I gotta return a very important phone call. So until I see you guys next week, be safe, shoot straight. And Jan, I gotta ask you a question next week about an event I'm gonna be appearing at in Virginia. Don't know how far away it will be from you. Maybe we could hook up. Catch you guys later. Love you guys. Talk to you later.
Love you.
See you, Frank.
Night.
So
Okay. As many of you know, I live in extreme upstate New York.
yeah.
Okay. I am literally 50 miles from Montreal. Okay. So
Pretty
I'm about
close.
as far north as you can get.
Pretty close, yeah.
Around the border areas here, they do have cameras that are watching the border. Okay, that doesn't mean there's not a lot of illegal entries. In fact, I know there is across the Canadian border. Okay, they don't have fences like they do at the southern border. That I do know, but they do have pretty robust monitoring network, at least in the areas that I'm at around here in upstate New York.
See, that's the difference. It's upstate New York. You go to the Dakotas, you go over to Oregon, you go over to the northwest of America. That's not the case.
Mhm.
They got nothing. It's nothing but trees. And that's where they're coming in through. They're coming in through the northwest because no
Right.
one's living there. It's just trees.
But I do know,
Did you
like I
guys-
said,
Did you guys see the report that came out this week that a judge is illegal?
The DACA, yes,
yes,
but we always knew that.
that's actually been coming out. There's been a few different reports on that. There's actually been a few different court cases on that have basically ruled that DACA is illegal.
But it was always illegal. because and
Well,
Obama
and
knew it.
the way that Obama went out of office and just signed the thing saying, "Oh, we're going to continue this," was illegal.
Yeah, but it was illegal for him to even this is why in his first term 20 times recorded by the mainstream news media, he said, as a constitutional scholar, as a law professor, the president cannot do DACA. And that he did it anyway.
Mhm.
He knew it was going to be overturned. Everyone knew it, but he's doing the same thing that now Biden is doing. He knows that college student loans, he can't get rid of them. He doesn't have the power. But he said, what is his answer? I'm going to do it anyway, and it'll just get through the courts. What's New York State? Hochul. He knows that the gun restrictions he's put in place are illegal. Do it anyway, because it'll go through the courts, and meanwhile, it's going to persecute American citizens.
Right. And that is their whole strategy. And that's why we have to quit fighting them just on the laws. We have to start taking the fight to them. We need to start holding them accountable. Okay. And I know some of you guys are on here. This is the first time watching us. Been kind of monitoring the feed. And we have a lot of people that have showed up from No Soundbites Allowed, which we do appreciate.
Yeah, they're a great audience.
Okay. The Liberty First Foundation has strategies to start the process to stop a lot of these unconstitutional laws. However, we don't have the funds to be able to do it. And that's where we are asking people to help us out. Let us be your voice. Okay? We can't do this alone. The funds that I have, the fund that Frank has, okay, are very limited. Okay? And Liberty First Foundation is Frank and I primarily funding this. And our funds only go so far. That's where we need people like you that want to actually get this country back on a solid foundation of the Constitution to help us out. Okay, and I'm going to get up on my soapbox. The choice is yours, folks. You can whine, bitch, moan, and complain about this, or you guys can start taking a stand. You can start doing something. I'm here every week, just like Michael is, just like Frank is, talking about this stuff. Okay, and for those that have joined Liberty First Foundation, we appreciate you. Okay, we are very thankful that you have taken the next step in helping us start getting rid of some of this unconstitutionality that is running rampant across our nation. But it's going to take more than just a handful of people, folks. And that's why, if nothing else, if you can't do anything else, do me with this one thing. Share this. Share information about our organization, Liberty First Foundation. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and several other social media sites. Okay? Share our information. Share our information about the Liberty First Foundation on our website at l1f.us. Okay? Help us get the word out at the very least, so we can actually start putting together a grassroots efforts to start actually restoring our country and taking control back for we the people. But we can't do it alone. Our voices only reach so far. But if you take and pass this information along, our voice starts reaching further. Okay? And we'll be here every week because we have a passion about this. We are dedicated to this country. Okay. And we're even actually dedicated to the government, not the government we have in place now, because that is not what was intended. We have a dedication to a government that is defined by the United States Constitution. Okay. That is what made this country literally the fastest growing superpower in the history of the world. Okay. It, it was the fact that we, the people, built a government where the people actually controlled their governance. Now, we can continue on. We can let those in power keep shredding away our rights, shredding away our authority, shredding away this, that, and the other, and literally start going towards an oligarchy, which is where we are headed. Or we can start taking a stand and saying, hey, enough is enough. We're the ones in charge, not you. You serve us, not the other way around. But again, the choice is yours. You can go as they want, or you can start taking a stand. Now, our plan is to develop it from the communities up, the way it should be. And yeah, it's going to take time because we didn't get here overnight. Okay? The Constitution turned 236 years old last week.
Yeah.
Okay? So we've had this document around for 236 years. In that 236 years, we've gone from the framers' intent to what we have today. It's not going to change overnight. It didn't get here overnight. It's not going to change overnight. But it's also not going to change without we, the people, doing something to make it change.
True.
Now, Michael talked about a convention of states, and yes, that is one avenue. Personally, I don't like the possible ramifications of a convention of states, but that is one avenue. The best avenue, and the avenue that has always driven change in this country, is from the communities. If the communities start getting together, start organizing, start coming together and uniting, because we are the United States of America, not the divided states of America, which is what everybody would have you believe, then we can start writing our path. But until that starts happening, we have no hope. We honestly don't. So I will fight every week on this live stream. I will fight every day out in the real world to try to start organizing things to start writing the course. Now, will you join me in that fight, or will you accept what's coming for us?
Yeah. Good.
Up the link,
point.
Mark.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And if you all don't know it already, we do have our membership drive that is ongoing. You can find that on our website at the Liberty First Foundation. Okay, and you can right here you can find a link to where we're holding our membership drive. Now, again, we can't do this alone. We have to have your help. And if you can't help us by becoming a member, please, please, please like, share, comment, Subscribe. Help us spread the word. Because that's what it comes down to, is getting enough people talking about this, getting enough people educated about what's going on. That's going to be the catalyst for this change. So you make the decision. I want to thank everybody that's on the show tonight. Michael, Jan, thank you all. Thank you, Frank. Everybody that chimed in the comments, thank you very much. We do appreciate your input. We didn't show as many comments as we normally do over the course of our show, but we do like you to be involved in the process, in the conversation. We do encourage you, if you want to be on one of our shows, okay, you can contact us through our various social media platforms. We'd love to have you on. Okay. You can message us through Facebook, you can message us on Twitter, or you can get a hold of us through our website. Okay, we'd love to have you on. And we don't care what side of the aisle you're on. That doesn't matter to us. Okay. If you do have opposing viewpoints, we would love to have you on and have you share your side of the story. Okay. Share your opinions, because that's what really America needs, is to have robust debate as to where we're headed and what's going on. Okay, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on YouTube and on Facebook. That's where we broadcast our live streams. Michael syndicated this to his YouTube channel as well, and we'll probably start doing that moving forward. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.